You know, if you watch Jaws backwards, then it's actually a pretty heartwarming story about a shark who gives limbs back to people who lost them. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about the factors that affect photosynthesis. Okay, so in order to understand that, we need to quickly review what photosynthesis is. So here is a quick review. We know, looking at photosynthesis, we know it happens in plant cells, right? So we zoom in here to a nice plant cell. Photosynthesis happens in a little organelle here called chloroplast. So we zoom into the chloroplast and we have it here. Then we zoom in even further into a little structure here called the thylakoid. Okay, we zoom into it. So here we have it. The thylakoid is the actual part that absorbs light, okay, that uses sunlight to do photosynthesis. So the sun, it shines the rays, okay, the sun, the light energy, and it's going to break apart water into all of its little pieces, okay, called photolysis. Now, all of these products happened in the light dependent reaction. Okay, this is the first part, which depends on light, as I just showed you. Now, all of these products are going to accumulate, and then they will move out of this thylakoid and into the outer space called the stroma, and here they will accumulate. Another thing that is going to accumulate is carbon dioxide, but carbon dioxide isn't made from the splitting of water. It is made from what we exhale as humans. So when we exhale carbon dioxide, it is taken up by these plant cells and brought here as well. Now we can do the light independent reaction, which is when all of these products are combined together in a process called carbon fixation into glucose. Okay, this is glucose. Okay, so that's it. That's what photosynthesis is. Now humans and other things can eat these plants and get glucose in that way, because we can't make glucose like this. We don't have this organelle called chloroplast. Now, which factors is the most important in influencing photosynthesis? So they're all here, and I'm going to show you right now. So here is the equation for photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide plus water yields glucose, so this is glucose, plus oxygen, okay? Now, this means the more carbon dioxide we have, the more products we can form, because carbon dioxide is one of the things needed, one of the materials needed to form glucose, because if there's not a lot of carbon dioxide, we can't combine them together as well to make glucose. So therefore, one of the main things that affect photosynthesis is carbon dioxide, okay? The more we have of that, the more it's going to happen. Next, light, okay? We know we require sunlight for the first step, the light-dependent reaction. If we don't have light, then water cannot be split, and we cannot form these products here. And these products will then not accumulate here as much, and hence we cannot form as much glucose, okay? Hence, carbon dioxide and light also both affect photosynthesis. Lastly, temperature. So temperature is very important. So once we have all of these products accumulate here, they don't miraculously form glucose. We need something called enzymes. Enzymes are little helping hands that do this, that build them together. Okay, enzymes, little molecules that make sure these products are put together into glucose. Now, these molecules or these enzymes only work well at certain temperatures. If it's too hot or too cold, they can't do their job properly. So even if there's a lot of pieces, a lot of material, if the enzymes don't work well due to an improper temperature, then photosynthesis won't happen as fast, okay? So these are the three main things that affect photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide, okay, light, and what was it? And temperature. Now you might ask now, why not water? Because wouldn't it be the more water, the more can be split and the more products can be formed? That's a great question, okay? And maybe this is true to some extent, but I think the reason why it's not considered a main factor is because there is already so much water inside your cells that there is an excess. There is an infinite amount of water, so that in reality, there's always enough water. So if you increase the amount of water around the cell, it won't impact it because there's already an infinite amount of water inside your cells. And so in reality, it's not a problem. The problem is carbon dioxide and sunlight and this temperature, okay? So, but I would say water technically is a factor. Now, bear in mind, these are the three important ones. This doesn't mean that these are the only ones. So when you do your IA or you think of an idea for your IA, don't think these are the only factors. There are many other things that can affect the rate of photosynthesis. For example, the color of light, okay? So don't just think it's these three. These three you need to know for IB, but you can think around and try and find other things, any random things, okay? These are not the only ones. Now, let's focus on these. So here we have a little graph, okay, that shows how the amount of light or the light intensity, so how the amount of light can affect the rate of photosynthesis. And we see here, I put here on the x-axis an increasing amount of light. So it's dim, a little bit of light, more light, and most light. So as this happens, how does photosynthesis change? We can see as the light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis increases a lot. It gets faster and faster, but eventually it plateaus, it flatlines. So despite increasing the light intensity, the photosynthesis doesn't happen as fast anymore. So how does this make sense? So maybe you thought it would be linear. The more light, the more photosynthesis. But actually it's not. It's this kind of shape. Because it doesn't mean the more light, the more photosynthesis all the time. Eventually, it stops. Eventually, giving more light would actually not increase photosynthesis. How does this work? So I'm going to give you an analogy here. So since we're in COVID, I'm going to use this little example here. Here is some testing people. They're going to take your sample, okay? A sample from you so that they can test if you have COVID or not. Now here we have Messi, okay? So he's the only one here, the only person to be tested. And he goes and he has 5 people to choose from. So obviously when he goes, only one person can be tested in 1 minute because each person takes 1 minute to test a patient. So since there's only one Messi, one patient, overall, all of these 5 people will only test one person in 1 minute, okay? So that's pretty slow, okay? Now, if we put more patients, so let's say 2, now they can test 2 people in 1 minute. So as we're increasing the amount of patients, so bear in mind, he represents light intensity. So as we increase the amount of patients or the light intensity, the more patients can be tested in 1 minute because now he can be tested and he can be tested. So now we can test 2 people in 1 minute. Now, let's put 3 people. Actually, let's put 4. So now that we have 4 people, now 4 people can be tested in 1 minute because they each go to a different person, right? So right now it's still increasing. The more Messis, the more patients, the faster the testing is, the more people can be tested. But now, let's put 6 people. We add 2 more. So now what's going to happen? I mean, let's put 5. Because now we can test 5 people in 1 minute, right? Because they each still have 1 person. But what if we put 6 people? If we put 6 people, the rate will not increase, right? Because there's only 5 testers, which means if we have 5 people, the rate will be like here. And if we have 6 people, 6 patients, the rate will still be there. So, and then we put 7 or 8 or 9 people to be tested, the rate will still stay the same because you only have 5 people. So only 5 people can be tested per minute. That's the same thing with light intensity. So when light gets absorbed in this reaction here, when light gets emitted, there is only a certain amount of these thylakoids. So if you increase the amount of light, when all the thylakoids are busy, then increasing the light even more would not help because all the thylakoids are already occupied and so no more light can be used. Okay, so that applies to this analogy here. And that's why even if you increase light intensity beyond a certain point, photosynthesis will start plateauing. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. It's a difficult thing to explain, but I hope it makes a bit more sense now. Now, next one, carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide has the same curve, same concept, okay? As you increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, photosynthesis will increase very fast, and then it will slow down until it doesn't increase anymore. And that's because carbon dioxide can accumulate here. But after a while, if you have so much carbon dioxide but not a lot of this material, then you can't form that much glucose, right? Because we also need a lot of this material. So increasing carbon dioxide beyond a certain point will not be useful because we need to make sure everything else increases as well, okay? And so the rate will plateau. Now, next one, temperature. So temperature looks different. We can see at cold temperatures, photosynthesis is slow, and at nice temperatures it is high, and at very high temperatures it is low again. Why is this? So remember before I said we need enzymes, okay? We need tools inside the cells, right? Inside these cells here to put all these molecules together into glucose, and they only function well at a certain temperature. If the temperature is too low, the enzyme doesn't work, and so it can't put them together. And so then photosynthesis is slow. If the temperature is just right, then it does it really well. And if the temperature is too high, you denature the enzyme. Denature means you break it, and so it doesn't work anymore. And so photosynthesis is going to be slow again. We can relate this to the real-life analogy of Bob the Builder. For example, say it's a really cold day and you're outside, or Bob the Builder's outside trying to fix something. If it's really cold, his hands and his tools, so his enzymes, will not work very well. Because an enzyme is something that builds something, right? So we can pretend this is an enzyme. And if it's very cold, his fingers will be cold and it won't move properly and he can't build it properly. But if it's the right temperature, his hands will move freely, the tools will work well, and everything will be built properly. And if it's too warm, he's going to be sweaty. His machine will be full of water and nothing will go very well, okay? So that's why temperature is also very important in photosynthesis. Now, to test if you really understood this, okay, I'm going to ask you something. So pretend we have this now, a graph of light intensity and photosynthesis. So we know as light intensity increases, photosynthesis will increase until it plateaus, right? So let me show you this. We'll use this. Okay, so let's say it is cold and there's a medium amount of carbon dioxide, and this is the rate of photosynthesis. What do you think will happen to this line if we increase the temperature to a nice temperature? So a temperature where the enzyme works well. Do you think this curve will be lower, higher? What do you suspect? Yes, it should be higher. Very good. Because now we kept the carbon dioxide the same, but we increased the temperature. Okay, and with a higher temperature, we know if it's not too high, then it will increase the rate of photosynthesis. Now, let's increase the amount of carbon dioxide. So we have a high amount. Now, what do you think will happen to the curve? It should increase, okay? So it's going to increase again, because we know an increased amount of carbon dioxide will lead to an increased amount of photosynthesis. So we can see this curve. If we increase the light intensity, if we have the light intensity at a certain point, if we have a higher temperature, the photosynthesis will be higher. If we have a higher amount of carbon dioxide, the photosynthesis at that light intensity will be even higher. So this is a trickier curve to look at, but if you understood these that I talked about before, then this one should make decent sense. Now the last little curve we're going to look at is this. So here we have on the x-axis temperature. We have a cold temperature and a nice temperature, so no high temperature. And we have photosynthesis. Notice, let's say we look at the cold temperature. At the cold temperature and at a dim lit, so not much light, the photosynthesis is pretty low. But as we increase the temperature, the photosynthesis at this low light intensity will increase vaguely, right? It will increase. But at this low temperature, if we had a high light intensity, then photosynthesis will be much higher compared to the dim light intensity. And if we increase the temperature, the rate of photosynthesis will increase, right? Do you notice? So this is real. If you understand these curves and the relationships, then this is all you really need to know for the factors affecting rate of photosynthesis. Now, lastly, we need to introduce the name called horticulturalist. No, horticulturalist. This is basically a name for a fancy, good farmer. Okay, do you know who this guy is? He is from Barnyard, and he's a farmer. Okay, or the people who will care a lot about the things I just talked about is fancy farmers. Okay, because they need to know how to optimize their plants from growing. Okay, how to optimize their photosynthesis so they can grow and become healthy plants out that he can sell one day to get money. Okay, so just know they are the kind of people who will really care about this. Now that is it for this video. I hope you understand all these factors, these three very important factors of photosynthesis, and just know that they are not the only ones. There are many other ones, so don't get stuck on just these three. Just know these are very important.